You know, we live in this world where if you have a huge amount of money, you can abuse the justice system. And if you have a little bit of money, the justice system sort of works okay. If you have no money, no resources, no capacity, you've been marginalized, the justice system is just not attainable. It's not even plausible to be able to access it. And Mark never forgets that. And his charge, his passion, his endless energy comes from knowing people don't have access to the rights and the systems and the care and the services they deserve. And he just acts like this crusader every second I'm with him.
Mark and Preble Street's work is the true embodiment of access to justice. And social justice is embedded in their mission. It's embedded in what Mark does every day as a leader. It's embedded in the way he advocates for people and the way that Preble Street has supported people. He and Preble Street, they're paving a path to create access to all of the rights that we are afforded in this life.
So, you know, when the CRC is getting you down, when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're crowded, when there's tons of people in the day shelter, or the breakfast was packed, or you don't have enough storage space for food, which I'm sure is going to happen soon after we move in there, in fact, just look at this video and think back and think of where we began and where our roots were from, and maybe this will make you feel a little better.
When Swanee came to Preble Street back in 1991, one of the early challenges was that Preble Street was thought of by many as just the group of hippies in the basement of the church. Preble Street itself wasn't really recognized by other social service providers for the services that we were doing. And so we weren't invited to the table. And Swanee changed that. And immediately when he came here, he started making sure that Preble Street was recognized for the valuable work that we were doing, for the advocating that we were doing for the individuals, for the presence we were in the community.
We need people like Mark because he is in it for the long term. He came to it because he believed in what needed to change in this country to improve the lives of the people that he cared about so deeply and the work that he cared about so deeply, and that's never changed. I mean, the vision that Joe Chrysler had when he created Preble Street in the basement is the vision that Mark holds today. This community has learned so much about poverty and homelessness and hunger and what it takes to address those issues because they listen to Mark, who listens to the people living in poverty themselves, and then he can tell that story alongside of them.
The first time I really had a conversation with him is in the early days that I was with HVJ. We would pick up our stipend checks at admin. And you know, Mark, as all good leaders do, has an open door policy. And I think, it was probably maybe the fourth or fifth stipend check I was picking up, and I see his office there, I see his door open, I see that he's not on the phone or staring at the computer doing anything. So I just walked in and plopped myself down in a chair and started chatting. And he was very, very welcoming, and his open door policy was indeed that, an open door policy. And to have that person who's running a big organization to take that time to just listen to what I was working on, what I was doing, what HVJ was doing, it meant a lot in my process of getting back to a good place.
So the first capital campaign, neither Mark nor I had ever been involved in a campaign. We decided that we better really go to school on this. This was at the beginning of Amazon, believe it or not. I went on Amazon and they had Fundraising for Dummies. And I bought 2 copies. And Mark and I read it over Christmas vacation. Fast forward to 5 or 6 years later, 7 or 8 years later, other organizations that we always thought, they were so much more sophisticated than us, great. They asked Mark and me to come to their board meeting to talk about fundraising. I have never gone on a fundraising call without Mark. and I wouldn't. Nobody can talk about Preble Street the way Mark can talk about Preble Street. And people know him, they believe him, they see his passion, but they also see his business sense, and he runs a great organization.
Mark is an extraordinary leader, not just a good leader. And I think it comes from an unbelievable empathy that too few people have in this world. And it's authentic and genuine to the core. And I've seen him in lots of circumstances, and he never loses that empathy.
From the beginning, when Swanee first came here to Portland, he started right away developing collaborations. And so that's one of his strengths, are the partnerships in the community that he builds.
So Vested and Preble's relationship, we have a very long-term and a very strong relationship. We've been collaborating for more than 20 years. The most notable work that we've done together is the work on site-based housing first. I would say Mark has been the most influential voice in site-based housing first, and the innovator and the founder of Housing First in the state of Maine. He brought it to the state of Maine in partnership with Avesta and my predecessor, and they worked together to create the first housing development kind of against all odds. And since then, he has continued to not only ensure that the 3 properties that we have are successful, but been a voice of, this is successful, this is helping the population more than we ever imagined, and we should do more, and here's the reason why. So he's been a steadfast advocate and the most influential voice.
He's a master at bringing together people from all different walks of life to work together to make the kinds of change that are needed in this community. Most people know Preble for the work they do with homelessness and housing, and they also do a tremendous amount of work addressing hunger. Everyone knows about their soup kitchens, but I'm not sure everyone knows how much the SNAP program, that is the old food stamp program, that is the nation's foremost anti-hunger program, has changed in Maine due to the efforts of Preble Street, working with Maine Equal Justice to make changes in that program. Today, I would say that Maine's SNAP program is one of the strongest in the country, and that's because of the careful and deliberate work that both of these organizations have done to really make it more sufficient, more effective for the people who need it.
The beauty of working with Swanee is that he challenges what seems to be unjust systems. He wasn't afraid to lead Preble Street to take a stand on marriage equality. The single greatest reason for youth homelessness was when they came from a household where the parents or the seniors in the household didn't agree with the sexual orientation of the child. The way that Swanee responded to the pandemic, the way that Swanee responded to the opioid crisis, the way that he has influenced Homeless Voices for Justice, leading a You Don't Need a Home to Vote campaign for 25 years. To be able to do things like that in advocacy outside of and in addition to the operating of our programs, he challenges us all to be better people and to be better staff and to do what's right for the community.
In Maine terms, Mark is a wicked funny guy. He has an incredible sense of humor. And I think in our work, having a sense of levity and being able to bring some lightness to something that can feel very, very heavy sometimes is an amazing trait.
The only time I see him sort of break that kindness character is, the first time I went to a Red Sox game with him, and the ref made a good call, but to Mark it was an awful call because it was against the Red Sox, and he was screaming at the poor ref as though he had been slapped by him. And I was like, wow, okay, Mark, you got a lot of intensity in there.
People know a lot of things about Swanee through Preble Street, but some of the things they might not know about Swanee is that he was the lead singer in a rock and roll band in college, that he is a juggler, and that he writes poetry. He's also a lot of fun. He likes to laugh, and there's a lot of joking that goes around.
Oh, very packed. If you see this, we've stacked food donations around a hot water heater and next to a stove. I'm sure that's real safe, but we do it.
He's this big, very affable a guy with that accent, you know, which he always is a little self-deprecating about. He always talks about being from Mass and, you know, and having that accent. And those have always been my favorite moments, because that is just simply Mark. Not Mark, the executive director of Preble Street, but just, you know, in those moments is when I see Mark as like, man, it'd be nice to have him as like a neighbor or something, you know, someone that you would get to connect with over, you know, sports or music or something that's not as deep as the work we do.
There's nowhere that Mark Swann goes in this city that people don't know that's Mark Swann, that's Preble Street. That's probably the first thing people think about. Mark and I go out to lunch sometime, he still wears his Preble Street badge all the time. That's not by accident. He doesn't forget to take it off. He wears it because he's proud of it. There are donors who give to Preble Street because Mark has sent them a personal, handwritten thank you. A woman with a lot of capacity passed away several years ago, and her family gave Mark, wrapped in a rubber band, all of the notes that he had sent her to thank her. Okay. You need to say any more about a person?
There are a lot of good people doing a lot of good work. Mark has toiled and struggled, and let's face it, not always does he get the recognition he deserves. Matter of fact, he gets a lot of grief. He is the target of a lot of animosity, unjustly, in my opinion. And so for him to get recognized in this way just tells me that something's right in the universe. You know, he is the person that should get recognized for ensuring people receive the justice and the support and the care that they deserve. Post-pandemic, I think we sort of have a deficit of compassion. And I hate to say that, but we need to remember that's our strength. Mark never forgets that we are just all one. We are all connected. The inspiration Mark provides others, certainly for me, has changed the way I've lived. And I try to be more compassionate every day because of it.
Mark is one of those people that not just helps me go on, but helps all the people around him go on every day. This is something I learned early on in my life, growing up in the 60s, that I hope I never forget. And that is a belief in the possible. And that is the greatest gift you can give to your colleagues, to your friends, to the people that you serve. And Mark does that every day.